time for the Sunshine State Showdown, covering every top sports story in the state of Florida, from South Beach to the state capital and everything in between. And now, without further ado, your hosts, Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Why, thank you, sir. This is the Sunshine State Showdown, covering all the biggest sports stories in the Sunshine State of Florida. We are your hosts, Brandon Kravitz, Zac Blobner. You can find us on air all across the Sunshine State, Orlando, Miami, and in Jacksonville. I could not have said it better myself. Find us streaming on iHeart 5 to 6 p.m. each and every weekday. You can find our video feed as well on the Facebook page of your favorite Florida iHeart sports station. Zac, I had tornadoes in Orlando this weekend. 2020 presses on, my friend. This is a behemoth of a year. I was in my bathroom at one point Saturday night.
Do you think the NBA saw that and was like, maybe we should reconsider the Disney idea? Like, yo, maybe Florida's not the best move for us. No, all jokes aside, I mean, I saw the videos. I certainly was keeping up with yourself and other people who were tweeting and on social media about the tornadoes touching down in Orlando, and just, man, the mass of some of them, terrifying, dude.
Yeah.
So, I'm happy you made it through. You're safe. The damage didn't seem like it was anything catastrophic, fortunately. Although I'm sure that there was some done, and just like we're more used to hurricanes certainly in this state. But nonetheless,
I mean, Zac, I'm in the middle of the day as these warnings are coming through, and at first the sun was still out, or it was still light outside. The sun certainly it was a very gloomy day with all the weather and all of that, but you could still see what the weather looked like outside. And then, so I'm watching the news and I'm getting the alerts on my phone saying, take shelter. I mean, they're not even like, hey, maybe you should do this. Or like, no, go inside in a bathroom right now. I've never been through a tornado. I lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and then Florida. We just don't get tornadoes in these places. And I'm on Google, like, tornado preparedness. Like, looking this up on the fly. What am I supposed to do? Is my cow gonna go flying? I don't know what the hell is going on. And then what happened?
That's a Twister. That's a Twister reference. Right. They're different.
Right. I was worried that Dorothy wasn't gonna know what was going on. And all that.
There it is. Now you're talking.
So, and then the problem is like, so we get this warning and they'd be like, all right, you're in the clear. And then 15 minutes later, you get another one, say, all right, it's back. Right. Like, is it circling back or is this a new one? And then the biggest issue is that then it became like 9 o'clock at night. I couldn't see outside anymore. So if you heard wind howling and the lightning was just nonstop and the rain was pounding, at one point I'm like, I don't know what a tornado feels like, but this feels like it could be one. I'm just going to take my child and dog and go in the bathroom. And we spent a couple minutes in there. It was weird. It was surreal. I don't know that there was anything even going on outside. It's just like, you just don't know. And you're told that you're in the thick of it. Like it was like the news was like showing our neighborhood practically.
Yeah, not good. I think the weirdest thing about tornadoes is that you can see them coming at you from afar. Like, I know you mentioned that the weather was sunny and that it didn't look like you're about to get hit with a natural disaster. But like, watching the videos, you can literally be on your patio and be like, oh crap, there's a tornado coming straight for us. Like, so it's scary stuff, man. Again, glad you're okay. And the hits just keep on rolling at 2020.
How about that? How about another one? All right. Time for the opening round. By the way, on a serious note, I hope that everybody in my neck of the woods is okay, of course. And
absolutely.
Some property damage and stuff like that. I don't know if anything super serious happened. If I'm wrong, you can text the show at 50857. But RIP to Reche Caldwell, former Florida Gator, was shot and killed in your neck of the woods over the weekend. And we'll have Joey Knight, who covers sports for the Tampa Bay Times, on the show coming up in about 30 minutes. But sad story.
Just super depressing. I mean, it's, and not to group, him in with a bunch of other celebrities or athletes that have passed away. But I feel like my dad has texted me once a week for the last 8 weeks with somebody that passed away suddenly.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it's like, it seems state of Florida related too.
Oh my God. Unfortunately, so many. And it's just been it's been so tough because we're emotionally exhausted from dealing with, a pandemic that we haven't seen in 100 years of its nature. Obviously you have police brutality finally in the forefront. We're finally talking about it and fighting against racism in America on a scale that we probably haven't in decades, if ever before. At least as a nation, as the world, if you look around globally, and then in between all that, when you try to breathe, you have these horrific stories of different celebrities and athletes passing away, like Caldwell. First of all, we remember him fondly on the field, loved him as a Gator. Tom Brady posted he was like his top receiver for a season or two in New England. Tom Brady very upset about it too, sending his condolences out through social media, I believe on Instagram specifically. So there was the football player, and that was one of the things that we'll remember most from the outside looking in. But what a lot of people don't know, and there were several tweets about this from people close to Caldwell on Twitter that you can go and find, he was a guy in the community that was really trying to help, African Americans overcome the boundaries that are set in front of them. He was a guy that got with the younger generations and was really, really trying to be a mentor and a beacon of light and hope in the right direction. And, it sucks to lose an athlete, but it sucks even more to lose somebody in the community that was as powerful and helpful as he was. And I mean, honestly, it's one of those situations, man, the world's not as good of a place without him. And we'll try to fill that role collectively, but it's one that isn't going to be easy to do. He left big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and a bizarre story. Hopefully Joey can shed some more light on it, and sad to hear that this is a guy that may have just kind of lost his way and couldn't really find his footing after playing football. I think that happens to some degree with a lot of athletes that you have to retire at an age like I'm 34. If I were a football player, I would be planning my retirement, if not already there. It's kind of bizarre when you think about it in that context. But let's switch gears, something more positive and something that really, Zach, right up my alley as far as I think I found my spirit animal, and I think his name is Bruce Arians, known as the quarterback whisperer, of course. He said that no quarterback controversy is needed in Miami with the Dolphins. I don't know exactly why Bruce Arians is commenting on the Miami Dolphins quarterback situation, but he absolutely did. He had an interview with 100.9 in Alabama, the radio station. He said, "I don't think you can learn anything holding a clipboard. I had Peyton Manning in his first year, Andrew Luck in his first year. Ben Roethlisberger was one of those guys that got in by accident because Tommy Maddox got hurt. You miss all the practice reps, you miss game reps, and I don't know what you learn by watching a clipboard." I happen to agree with the guy, and specifically how it affects Tua. Your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, every situation is different, right? It certainly did a lot of help for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anybody would argue that him sitting behind Brett Favre helped him be more prepared than if they would have just thrown him in game one in Green Bay. And that's the argument I think a lot of us use. Patrick Mahomes, another great example more recently, sitting behind a guy like Alex Smith for a year. It seemed to have helped him. Now, unfortunately, it's literally impossible to know if those guys would have panned out the way that they have if they had been playing game one after they were drafted in each of their respective cities, both Green Bay and Kansas City. But with that being said, collectively, we look at it as a football community and say that benefited those guys, that it allowed them time to grow. We've also looked at different situations and been like, that poor guy didn't get time to sit. They threw him right in. I believe Deshaun Kaiser was an example of that in Cleveland. I know I bring up the Blaine Gabbert case. Ironically, he was on the Tampa Bay roster behind Brady right now and was in Arizona with Bruce as well, as a guy who could have probably benefited from sitting behind a vet QB for a little while. So we've seen examples where it's helped guys to sit behind and watch, and we've seen examples where guys probably would have been better off sitting back and watching.
Okay,
so I don't think it's fair for Bruce to say that.
Let me ask you this, because you're right. I mean, like with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, there's such great examples of, look, they sat behind somebody that really was good at their craft. Brett Favre much better than Alex Smith, but both really understood the quarterback position at a level where they would be great mentors. If I don't know that Brett Favre really wanted to be, but still, the fact
just
that
from
they
watching
had that
him
ability,
and being next to him on the bench, you're going to learn. Yeah.
And the fact that you can kind of get your footing as a professional and all of those things. It sounds good in theory to be patient. And we have
in theory. You're using hard examples. That's not a theory. That's
but I'm getting to your point that you made is you sort of breeze by it, but like you don't know if it would have been any different if Patrick Mahomes had started year one.
Yeah.
Does that mean that he doesn't win a Super Bowl this year? and doesn't become the guy that we've seen. Like, is that what made the difference for someone whose talent clearly is what makes him special?
Fair. So let me ask you this then. Do you think it hurt those guys to sit?
No, absolutely not. I don't think it definitely doesn't hurt you to sit.
We know it doesn't hurt them, and that there's a very good potential that it helped them. We don't know that it helped them, but we know it didn't hurt them.
No, but that's that kind of takes you back to Bruce Arians' point. It is 100% not going to hurt them. That would be like saying, okay, you can get your driver's license when you're 16, but if you wait until 17, maybe you'll be better prepared, continuing to drive with a parent. Yeah, that can't hurt you because you're not behind the wheel. So you can't get hurt. You can't get into an accident. You can't get a speeding ticket. So that's true. But does that mean that you're also maybe behind a step? If Andrew Luck had sat behind whoever the hell the other quarterback was, it was like Jim Sorgi at the time for the Indianapolis Colts. Is his life any better as a professional quarterback? I'm not sure that that's the case.
There's a lot of mystery involved for sure. There's a lot of guessing on our part. I don't think that you can just assume, though, throwing a guy into the fire is the best situation. Now, we've seen, and just in life, we've seen that happens a lot in a lot of different careers. I certainly think in radio that happens often. Guys are thrown into the fire, and they it either works out and they're able to survive and then they're good to go in that field, or it doesn't work out and they know pretty quickly, like, this isn't somebody who should be following this career path. So I think that there's something to be said about finding out instantly whether a guy can make it through or not. Right. Sink or swim. Yeah. I think that there's something to that, but I just don't think it can be as cut and dry as like, well, there's no way that this way works, but this way does. I think both have benefits, pros and cons to them. And look, I think it's different, again, for every situation. Tua certainly has health as a factor in his. We think that the Dolphins' ceiling is, 8-8 this year. If whether it's Tua or Fitzpatrick or whatever, we think, 8-8 or 9 wins. We certainly don't think that they're a Super Bowl contender. So if that's the case, what's the rush to get Tua in there? And I agree that Tua should play at some point this season. We know Joe Burrow in Cincinnati is going to play. He's playing right now. Like, he's their guy. He's taking QB1 snaps mentally. He's going through the playbook. He's doing all the things that a starter would do, and understandably so. But I guess my question would be, who do you think is better off? Joe Burrow starting, and again, situational, but Joe Burrow starting game 1, week 1 for Cincinnati, or what if Tua waits half the season and then he starts the second half because the Dolphins weren't that good and they can afford to put him in there to learn the latter half of the season?
I think where both of these situations, you can look at both of them and sort of answer the question in the same way. And you say every situation is different. It is different in how competitive are you and who's your quarterback that's helping you be competitive right now. The Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals are both going to try and win games. Now, we can sort of roll our eyes and scoff at the idea of their ability to win a Super Bowl, but neither team is in tank mode. They're going to go out there and they're going to try and win. Their head coaches are trying to. Zach Taylor's job is not guaranteed. Even Brian Flores' job is not guaranteed after the year that he had. So those guys are going to go out there. They're going to look at their quarterbacks and say, who gives us the best chance to win right now? That should be the focus. Not, well, how's the best way to coddle Tua and make sure that he's ready? And I think that over everything else is what Bruce Arians is saying, is that if he's the best guy, then what does he have to gain by sitting there with a clipboard? If he's ready to go, play him.
You brought up a great point, though, without even doing it, I think, in that segment, because you mentioned a couple of the things. There's a third part of it, too, which is who's the coach? What kind of mindset does the coach have? Brian Flores is clearly a defensive guy. Not that they don't have OCs and offensive guys that can figure it out. Cincinnati, it's very different, right? With a guy like Zach Taylor. I mean, he is offense. He is quarterbacks. And I think you have your head coach working as closely as he's going to be working with Burrow. I do think that it slightly changes everything, because I don't know if Tua is going to get the same kind of support from a defensive-minded head coach. He has guys still that he can lean on, and I think obviously Fitzpatrick being there is helpful, whether it's Tua starting or backing him up. But with that being said, again, situational. So Bruce Arians, as an offensive guy, he's like, yeah, let's roll out with whatever guy we got, because I'm going to be molding them and working with them and figuring it out. And more, stuff on tape and film is going to make it easier for them as a coach to break down and help progress that player. But if you're a defensive guy like Brian Flores, is there as much of an emphasis to throw in the rookie QB right away?
I think there's sort of like a general debate to be had here about whether or not guys, and you mentioned sports talk radio. It is similar in some ways where you either just have it or you don't. And maybe that's what it comes down to. If we're talking about what gives you the best chance to be successful over the course of your career as a quarterback, maybe the answer is both and neither. And it works that way for everybody because you're either good or you're not. And some guys, like, I can't think of any examples right now, maybe you can, of guys that did get that patient treatment and then turned out to be busts anyway. Well, I'm sure that they exist.
We can look at it the other way around, though. Guys that really weren't good until they were older. Kurt Warner, right? That's the example we all use. He was a grocery store clerk, and he came out and he was balling for St. Louis and then eventually the Cardinals as well. So we've seen areas where guys down the latter half of their career can get better. I know there's a lot of people in Tallahassee that think Jameis Winston could potentially be that next guy, right? That had some things that went really well, had some things that didn't go well at all. And then as he gets older, because of his talent level, can figure out the rest. So I think that there is an argument out there that there are certain players that blossom not right away, not within their first few years, but, as they get closer to 30, as opposed to when they start out in their 20s, early 20s. So we just have so many examples. And that's why, again, at the end of the day, it is all situational. And I just don't think it's fair. And I love Bruce Arians and I love what he's doing in Tampa Bay. I think Tua was the pick. I'm excited to see what he does in Miami. With all that being said, though, it's not fair to say, well, there's nothing a guy's going to learn from holding a clipboard. That's not fair at all, especially from the college to the NFL level. Learning a new system, I mean, and given, that's not to say that you can't learn on the job, right? Because a lot of us do that too. But again, there's more than one way to peel a potato. I know that's not the saying, but
no, but you know what? It absolutely should be, because I think the saying is that there's more than one way to skin a cat, but that sounds highly aggressive.
I don't like that saying.
How has PETA not gotten involved in that one yet? I like skin the potato.
We're gonna say there's more than one way to skin the potato.
There's more than one way to season a French fry. Okay, all right. Well, that's good. I think that, and I can't even tell if we agreed or disagreed there, but it was good. That was a good, solid conversation.
Look, the headline for that segment is "There's more than one way to peel a potato."
If that's not the name of the podcast today, then we've definitely screwed up. Speaking of screwing up, we'll talk about Major League Baseball next.
Oh man.
Rain or shine, these guys have you covered. Now back to the Sunshine State Showdown with Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
If you're not following along on our video feed, I strongly suggest you do that as well. At 96.9 The Game, at The Game Jacks, at 940 Wins. You can also find our podcast uploaded daily on the iHeartRadio app. I have a feeling I know what the podcast is going to be titled today. Many ways to skin the potato. What else is on Zac Blobner's mind today?
Blobner's Big Bite. You're going to need a bigger boat.
And before we get to the aggression, we'll start with the education. Let me give you guys the latest on what's going on in Major League Baseball. We have the latest proposal from owners. Before I run through this, I'm going to let y'all know players are already scoffing at the latest proposal. So this new deal is no closer to giving us baseball than we were an hour ago, a day ago, a week ago, a month ago. But let me educate you if you haven't seen the latest. Starting with the original offer put forth, which was 82 games where players receive just over $1 billion in salary and $200 million in playoffs pool money to be shared. The current offer, 76 games, so less than the original, where players receive just a little under $1 billion in salary and $443 million in playoff pool money to be pushed out there. There's also an option for 48 games, which is half of that, where it's just over $1 billion in salary with no playoff money. So multiple options for the players to sink their teeth into, just like we're sinking our teeth into Blobner's big fight right now. Now, I know you're asking yourself, Zach, that's a lot of numbers. What the hell does it mean? Is it any different than the last proposal as far as total money? Money very similar. It looks like you're still getting prorated. They're still asking the players to take a little bit less, but more playoff money to be pushed into the picture. So they've got options. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just one ridiculous proposal after another. Owners to players, players to owners. And this feels like a weird-ass divorce settlement hearing thing between two people that are clearly moving in opposite directions. And instead of just figuring it out, shaking hands and agreeing so both can move on with their lives and their normalcy, that they're like, you know what? No, you're not getting this deal done until you throw in the cabinets that I paid for. Well, you can have the cabinets, but I want the sofa. And you're just going to argue down to the most minute details. Who bought the doorknobs? Who had the half-eaten box of cereal? Nobody gives a damn. And it's ambiguous. It's unnecessary. You're going through all this extra conversation. Neither side seems like they actually want to get a deal done. And we can keep seeing all these ridiculous proposals. The direction we're heading overall is no baseball in 2020. I wouldn't be surprised for a strike in 2021. It's just awful news for anybody that enjoys seeing things played out on the diamond. And to the average watcher and listener, you're already gone. You're already going to be tuned out. So baseball, before you lose anybody else, put your differences aside. Who cares who gets the sofa? Let's see it done.
Absolutely. Well said. I mean, we're skinning potatoes in a variety of ways. We're handing out cabinets and divorce hearings. This is a Monday that will not soon be forgotten on the Sunshine State Showdown. That's good stuff. Joey Knight, sports reporter for the Tampa Bay Times, next.
Welcome back to the Showdown with your hosts, Brendan Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Time for some added insight. Let's head to the Sunshine State Hotline.
I know when that hotline blink.
Joey Knight, sports reporter for the Tampa Bay Times. You can follow him on Twitter at TBTimes_Bulls. Sad story coming out of Tampa with the death of former Gator Reche Caldwell, resident of Tampa. Joey, this is tragic. He was still so young. What do we know at this point in regards to how or why?
We know very little so far, sadly, and I don't know if and when we're going to get answers. From what we found out, my fellow reporter Matt Baker was able to speak to Reche's mother yesterday, and this is the immediate aftermath. And she told Matt that she feels like Reche was set up, kind of ambushed, shot, outside of a residence. So she said she's gonna follow it all the way to the end and pursue it. And, presumably the authorities are pursuing it diligently, but we have no further answers right now. And I don't know when we will. Like you said, it's a tragic thing. Reche Caldwell, one of the best athletes in any sport to come out of the Tampa Bay area, only 41 years old. Just tragic. There's no other word for it. Just to lose his life at that early of an age. And Reche had some problems in recent years, self-inflicted, but still only 41 years old. And I know he was a father. It's just terribly, terribly sad.
Yeah, definitely our condolences, out to all those affected friends and family. It sucks for the Tampa Bay area. I mean, there's a lot of people that are upset today to hear that news. And I certainly don't want to downplay that in any capacity. I do want to pivot to something that was a little bit more uplifting that also occurred over the weekend. KJ Sales over there with USF held a peaceful protest in March, and I was actually out there. I saw you out there as well, Joey. What can you tell us about that protest?
You know what? I wouldn't even call it a protest. It was just more of a procession in the name of racial equality. It was, I've been privileged to join the Times in its coverage of some of these demonstrations and protests. And, I've read about almost all of them. And this was probably the most powerful one I've encountered locally. It was meant, to be done in peace. It was meant to raise awareness, of racial injustice and police brutality. But it was just done in such a poignant, powerful, compassionate way. KJ, organized this, senior cornerback for the Bulls, as we all know. This is something that was on his heart after the shooting of George Floyd, and KJ's the father of a 2-year-old son. So he reached out to some community leaders, and they helped him arrange this. And there were several hundred who showed up in the rain on North Franklin Street in downtown Tampa, and KJ led them on just a very quiet procession, almost a silent procession, to his neighborhood about a half mile away, going toward Ybor City on Central Avenue. And he stopped at the church where he was raised in, and he said a few words to the group, not very long, but again, just talking about, the kind of society he wants his son to grow up in, and the racial equality he wants to see, and the end of police brutality. And then he said a prayer, just asking God, to bring peace and healing. And in the middle of the prayer, he had to stop because he was crying. It was just really a powerful moment. And then, the new coach, Jeff Scott, the new football coach, said a few things, kind of reiterating what KJ told the group. And then it was a quiet walk back to where we started. Fortunately, a lot of these protests, not only locally, but nationally, were very peaceful this weekend, guys. But still, they had some political undertones, and some of them disparaged the police. But this procession had neither of those things. It was just a quiet, solemn, peaceful procession and to cry out for racial equality and an end to police brutality. And it was done in a very dignified, graceful way. And I was honored to cover it, quite frankly.
Joey, I think one of the uplifting things that I've seen through all of these protests, the peaceful ones, of course, is just how diverse all of them seems to be, even more so than we've ever seen before. I mean, you can go back to the 60s and the civil rights movement, and there was some diversity in there, but nothing like we're seeing now. I mean, it just seems like from my view, and I have not attended one yet, that it just seems like this is sort of an all-in kind of thing for the first time, maybe even in the history of this country. Is that the feeling that you get when you're there? Like, yes, we are supporting the Black community in walking and doing these things, but that everybody's kind of in this together.
Absolutely. Tremendous diversity. And I think, it's terribly tragic that it took that kind of death that George Floyd suffered for the nation to kind of get the message. But for lack of a better term, I think this time the nation gets the message because, as you indicated, these are diverse gatherings, Caucasian, African American, all kind of, ethnicities and, people of different genders, obviously, they're politicians, coaches, students, older people, younger people, just literally from all walks of life. KJ Sales' procession, which I said drew several hundred, drew a bunch of USF coaches, a bunch of USF student athletes, current and former. I saw a University of Tampa women's basketball coach there. I saw some high school football coaches from the Tampa Bay area there. I saw a lot of these people bringing their children along. Michael Kelly, the USF athletic director, walked with his daughter. So yes, and just not that procession, but the other protests I've covered, just a very diverse demographic of people speaking out against, what they perceive as injustices and police brutality and screaming for racial equality. And that's, talk about uplifting. That's very uplifting to see.
Yeah, definitely the word united. I know Jeff Scott's been hammering it since he got to Tampa Bay, but I don't think it ever resonated more than on Saturday in the rain, my friend. To pivot to some of the on-the-field stuff, obviously we're still wondering if college football is going to be played. I know you don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but speaking just in general about the AAC here with USF and UCF, obviously we're on in Orlando, Miami, and Jacksonville as well. What's the latest you're hearing from the conference and just college football in general, Joey?
Well, some of those schools have started voluntary workouts. Most significantly, obviously, UCF has started bringing its athletes gradually and cautiously back to campus for voluntary workouts. And, it's difficult for the AAC to enforce a blanket policy for these workouts because the conference is so spread out across the country. And some places where an AAC school is located is, quite frankly, a coronavirus hotspot, and others are not. I mean, this is a conference that has schools from Philadelphia, Dallas, Tampa, Orlando, North Carolina, Ohio. So it's really difficult for them to make a blanket policy, just considering how sprawling the conference is. But I can tell you that USF is close to getting things to a point where they can invite their athletes back for voluntary workouts on campus. They have a committee on campus that is kind of like a health policy committee, if you will, for lack of a better term, that is just kind of establishing the guidelines and the protocols for getting students back on campus. And they've been meeting, and just in my discussions with Michael Kelly, USF is very close to that point where they can be having students back on campus for voluntary supervised workouts. There's a huge tent right now on the football practice field with a bunch of weight equipment under the tent. And that looks like the place that they're going to hold these voluntary workouts and conduct them. So I drove by there today and I saw that huge tent. They're mowing the grass on the practice field. So the wheels are in motion. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this week, USF athletes return to campus.
We're talking with Joey Knight, sports reporter for the Tampa Bay Times. Have you had any conversations about what a shutdown in terms of fans not being allowed in the stadium at Raymond James, what that would mean for USF in terms of the type of revenue hit that would be? When we've talked to Danny White on our airwaves in Orlando, and he makes no bones about it. I mean, he would rather see, I'm sure that you've heard these since, that he would rather see a postponement of the season just to get fans in the stands, because it accounts for about 50% of the overall budget, not just for football. What have you heard from the side of USF in terms of their concern for that loss of revenue and a big game coming up to start the season against Texas, I believe? That's a big one.
Yeah, it's obviously a concern for USF, as it is for everybody. And Michael Kelly has indicated that he's already exploring ways to cut his budget for next year by 15%. And you see all over the country, athletic departments are having to furlough employees or even lay off people, and coaches are taking salary cuts. None of that has been implemented at USF yet. But they are going to have to trim their budget a little bit. So it is a concern. They are still in talks with people at Raymond James Stadium about what a game day would look like. I don't think they're anywhere near far enough along to where they have to establish or implement any kind of policy yet. What are we at, June 8th? So, the first home game is still nearly 3 months away. So, that we still got a lot of time to work with here. And I know some decisions are going to have to come as that date approaches. Fans are going to have to know, where they stand and what game days are going to look like. But it's still 3 months away. There, a lot of things can happen. And I believe we will have college football this fall. I believe we will have it with fans in the stands. Could it be a limited number, a less number? Of course. I was talking to a USF professor from the health department last week, and I was asking him about tailgating. And, he said tailgating, could be, the ideal template for how to social distance, because each person is in their space, their tailgate space. And if you act responsibly, don't cough on anybody and, observe that distance you have between cars, that could be just, the ideal template for how to social distance. So I think we're going to see tailgating. I think we're going to see fans at Raymond James Stadium this fall. They just haven't gotten to the point where they've determined, okay, we're going to have this many fans. We're going to reduce the fan population by this much of a percentage. They're not there yet.
Joey Knight, sports reporter, Tampa Bay Times. You and Matt Baker did a phenomenal job covering this Reche Caldwell story. Tragic, his loss at the age of 41 years old. Thank you so much for your time, Joey.
Thanks, Joey.
Guys. Take care.
We're talking about all these different scenarios and the revenue loss and all of these different things. And it is like, I have to remind myself at this point, there's been so much to distract from it, that coronavirus is still something that we need to think about, not only on this job, I mean, more so like in our personal lives, where you go out and about, and it's like, it's easy to forget because we get comfortable with pretty much anything. We get used to it. Even though we'd never dealt with this before, it's become customary to social distance and all of those things. And then you also are bombarded with all this other stuff that's really important. This racial conversation and the protests. And, you were out in was it downtown Tampa? I mean, these are kind of things basically. Like you end up going out and about, and it's easy to forget that this is still something that we all need to be concerned with.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I'm not a scientist. That's one of the areas I've continued to try to avoid touching on too much. I can tell you the protests with KJ Sales and USF that I attended on Saturday. It was in the rain, which isn't ideal for any health situation. But everybody did have masks on. Everybody had gloves on for the most part. I'd be lying if I said a lot of social distancing was happening. We walked as a pretty big unit, pretty big group. And one direct path, and then one direct path back, a little bit more sporadic, I guess, on the return. But nonetheless, I mean, we're going to find out a lot about this pandemic in the next month or two, just collectively looking at the nation from the protests and everything. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to break down the ins and outs of it all. I continue to wear masks and stuff, while I go out most places. But we'll find out one way or another. I mean, when you look at these giant groups of people, and again, the cause is the bigger reason here. So I don't want to, condemn protesting and people getting together. But if it, I hate to say it, but at this point, like if it's going to get worse, we can't stop it, right? Like,
no, I mean,
if it's so many people.
If it's going to get worse, it's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to get a lot worse faster than what we had planned because of
we'll know real quick.
We never would have done this. I mean, in any other situation, we never would have all just been like, hey, let's meet at downtown in the thousands together.
Now, on the flip side, and again, try to find the silver lining, try to be an optimist, half glass full, potato half peeled kind of guy. As we
Why would you half peel your potato? You go all the way, man.
Look, man, I'm just trying to bring more potatoes into our conversation. But with that being said, though, if for whatever reason we see that these protests don't lead to large numbers of coronavirus and hospitalization specifically, that's a pro moving in direction of fans in the stands again for sports in the fall. So there is or potentially could be a silver lining. On the flip side, if it goes the opposite direction, we know that fans in the stands is not a good idea and won't work. So either way, we're going to find out something sports-wise when it comes to fans and stands because of the protests and all this. And again, it's not probably fair for me to group that into the conversation, but it's the reality. Like it is. We are going to find out information from this.
Well, I hope social distancing continues, and not just because of the virus. I just like that we're all kind of like people just get too close in general. So
you like to peel your potatoes in separate sinks. I get it.
Stay 5 feet away. We don't need to be next to each other all the time. And you and I, in this show, we invented social distancing on this show. We're way ahead of the curve. Way ahead of the curve.
Very true.
Coast to Coast is next.
The Sunshine State Showdown with Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Welcome back to the show, folks. Brandon Kravitz, Zac Blobner. You heard the man. Thanks for taking the ride with us. If you have something that you'd like to add, you agree with, disagree with, or even a topic or a team that you want us to mention on this show, we're happy to hear it. We'll hear you out. You can hit us up on Twitter at Brandon Kravitz, at Zac on the mic. It's been a lively show. Some sad news, some happy stuff, and spuds have somehow made their way onto the Sunshine State program. I'm feeling like, Zac, at this point, maybe we pitch this show to Idaho, make it the Florida-Idaho conjunction kind of thing.
Yo, every day is spud day on the Sunshine State Showdown. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Do you have a way that you prefer your potatoes above others?
Yeah, French fries.
Is that simple? What kind of French fry, though? I mean, you can't just say French fries. That's like saying I like chocolate.
I really do. I love all French fries. If I had, if I was going out and I could order one French fry, it'd be a curly fry. But I don't discriminate, man. Long, thick cut. You can give me crinkle cut. I'll take skinny cut. Any French fries you got, I can find a home for in my belly.
It honestly upsets me a little bit, the lack of love that the steak fry gets, because I really feel like that's one of the best fries out there if you season it right.
It reminds me most of like the frozen fries, though, right? Like when I think like, oh, I'm gonna bring home fries to make, it's steak fries. Like it feels like it's just heated. It's a microwavable fry as far as I'm concerned.
You're just blaming steak fries and the fact that that's the one that you order that's the one that you buy when you go to the grocery store.
Absolutely.
It's not fair. It's not fair to the steak fry. Many people disrespecting the steak fry, and I've frankly had enough of it. I've had enough of it.
I don't make the rules, bro. I don't make the rules here. You know what I'm saying? There's many ways to peel a potato. That's
right.
All I got.
There's many ways to load your baked potato, right? Really, honestly, a potato is good in some. You really can't screw up a potato. You go loaded potato, just butter and sour cream. I'm cool with that. French fries of all varieties, you're right. I mean, I can't think of a way where you go, no, that's disgusting. Mashed potatoes,
chips,
great.
We didn't even get to potato chips.
Oh, forget it.
That's
a whole separate conversation.
We're hitting the surface of this iceberg.
Let's go coast to coast.
Coast to coast and throws it down.
Oh, and don't forget, if you miss our show live, you can find our podcast available daily on the iHeartRadio app. Let's go back to the Bay. Zac Blobner standing by. What you got?
Not a lot of NBA talk on the show today early on, but we do want to hit on the fact that, they're looking to get back to work very soon. And I want to ask you this, because we see that we just talked to Joey Knight. He said college football is probably going to have some kind of fans in the stands, doesn't know the capacity, but you would expect some over at Raymond James Stadium for the Bulls. Baseball is talking about potentially having some fans in their stands if they ever get through, their settlement situation where they can't get on the same page. If the other sports start to let fans in the stands, should the NBA and would Orlando actually benefit the most from that, having the Magic obviously playing right there at Disney?
Well, I think early on, I guess they would. I think it would be, my guess is that if they were to allow fans in at the beginning stages when they got into the playoffs, which is going to be about mid-August, then it would probably be a pretty diverse crowd in terms of where the people that are there are from. Keep in mind, you're at Disney, where you've got people from all across the world. I don't know what the process.
Ticket to get in, right? I don't have to be like.
I guess I don't know how that process would work, but I think we can scratch that as an option. Unfortunately for the Magic, unless they are able to do magicianal things, it's going to be tough for them to move up. Thank you. It's going to be tough for them to move up and get past Milwaukee. I think that it's really something that you might end up seeing them think about in some capacity by the time you get to September, where you get to the conference finals and you've got the NFL being played, Major League Baseball probably being played at that point. College football could even start up at that point. And if they have fans and you've got none and you're still in this little gym at Disney, it's going to seem a little goofy. It's going to seem goofy, but
Disney pun.
How about that? Yes.
Disney pun.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's how we roll. What a do it, man. Just let it flow like that. You can't keep going after that. You post. That's it. We're good. Let's get a little Sunrise against South Beach action here. This one flat out. Will the Panthers make it further into the NHL playoffs than the Heat do in the NBA playoffs?
Well, let's see.
Panthers got to play in against the Islanders, who are higher seeded. Then they'd probably have to play the Lightning.
I think I like the Panthers' chances better just because there's a play-in aspect. And wouldn't you say, does that count as making it further if you win the play-in, or do you have to beat the Lightning?
Absolutely.
Then yes,
that counts. That's like a wild card.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, anybody can win. It's like any given Sundays. This applies the same for hockey. But I do like the Heat in the first round. They're probably going to get the Pacers. So we'll see how that goes.
The Panthers because if they run into the Lightning in round 2, last year shows us that could go bad for the Bolts.
Oh, man, we're going to be all over that. The Panthers versus the Lightning on this show. Are you kidding me? That does it for us today, folks. He's Zac Blobner. I'm Brandon Kravitz. This is the Sunshine State Showdown. Download the podcast. Available on the iHeartRadio app.